Come on. Be muted. There. Now you can hear me. Everything looks okay. Let me let one more person in. Kind of a late start today. And let me share my screen. No, that's good. All right. Now, muscular system. Here we are. We're getting it. Get out of here. Get over there somewhere. Is everything good? I'm sharing, I'm recording, I'm doing everything other than teaching. Let me get back to where I need to be. I think last time we're talking about shape. Does that sound right? Okay. So finally, welcome. You guys, welcome everybody. Today is Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. It's a little after 11 o'clock. That's okay. We're going to have plenty of time. I'm going to hopefully finish early. I'm sure it will. There's only a couple slides left. Let me catch the lights real quick. That one. That. Okay. So I think we finished this criterion, right? The shape. And so I can't remember what number that is, but this is our next criterion, fascicular orientation. Remember I was talking about this is the grain of the muscle, the direction the muscle is actually running. And sometimes muscles are named according to that, like the direction they're running. So these terms like trans, rectus, oblique, and scalene refer to the axis of the body or the axis of an appendage or whatever. For example, this muscle, transversus abdominis. Of course, you know abdominis, right? That's the abdominal region. And so transverse, remember the transverse plane is the horizontal plane going across. And so if you look in the abdominal region, making up the torso, there's a series of layers of muscle, about 4 layers of muscle. And you can distinguish one layer versus the next by the orientation of the fascicles. You know, you can tell which way the muscle is running. And so the transversus abdominis has muscles that are running on the horizontal plane or transverse plane. Likewise, like rectus, which means straight, you know, straight as in, what's straight? How's that related to an axis? Well, straight as in parallel with the midline. That's straight, I guess, running straight up and down, or straight lengthwise, like the rectus abdominis. It's running parallel with the abdomen or the axis of the body, straight up and down. And of course, like I said before, if you're kind of curious, you know, what does this look like? You know, just you can Google rectus abdominis and look at it, and you see that's your 6-pack muscles, and the muscle fibers run straight up and down. Okay, oblique. Remember the word oblique means like at an angle, or literally means slanting, and usually, you know, slanting, not horizontal, not vertical, but kind of in between. Okay, kind of maybe like a 45-degree angle. There are 2 abdominal muscles making up the abdomen, the abdominal body wall. There's an external abdominal oblique and there's an internal abdominal oblique. And so external abdominal, that's a location, right? Specifically on the outside of the abdominal region. And then an internal abdominal oblique would be a location, but means deeper internally. But oblique, that's fascicular orientation because it's running at an angle. And you look, the external abdominal oblique musculature, that's the most superficial. And this muscle fiber is kind of running down like this, kind of converging towards the midline. And then the internal abdominal obliques are running the actual opposite directions, up like this, up and out. So if you dissect away each layer, I get 4 layers: transversus abdominis, rectus abdominis, external abdominal oblique, internal abdominal oblique. They're all, you can all distinguish one from the other by the direction of the muscle fibers. Fascicular orientation. Then added just one more, just to add, I guess, another term, scalene. The word scalene means something that is scaliness, means uneven. So what does that mean? You know what I picture every time I think of scalene? Do you remember, y'all remember the game Etch-a-Sketch? You ever had an Etch-a-Sketch? It's like a little screen that has 2 little dials. You turn and it draws things. And then they show you like a picture on the box, all the great stuff you can draw, like a clown and a pony and all these cool things. And everybody, oh wow, I gotta have an Etch-a-Sketch so I can draw like that. But it never turns out that way. Nobody can draw anything except stairs. Can you draw the stairs? You go doot, 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 doot. Everybody could draw the hell out of some stairs, And so anyway, that pattern, that stepped kind of pattern like that, that's called a scaliness pattern, or that scalene. That's what, I don't know, what it kind of reminds me of. Scalene. And if you look at the scaliness muscles, they're like along the vertebrae, they kind of stepped like that, I suppose. I don't know. Between the processes of the vertebrae, and yeah, you just Google it or just look it up in your book. So anyway, but scaliness anterior, scaliness would be a fascicular orientation. Of course, anterior, that would be a location, but doesn't tell you where. But if you're like, studying the back muscles, you'll see that. Okay. Next criterion, remember origin and insertion. I told you that origin and insertion, the muscles, I have 3 examples here that were named according to the origin and insertion. You look at them carefully, they're compound terms. It's a brachioradialis, coracobrachialis, sternocleidomastoid, okay? They're compound terms made from different regions. And when you're naming a muscle according to its origin and insertion, you always write the origin first. Let's say O for origin, I for insertion. So brachium, upper arm, that's your humerus, right? And radius, that's your lateral forearm. Remember, your forearm has 2 bones in it, radius and ulna. And so this muscle, brachioradialis, its origin is on the humerus, and it inserts on the radius. So how do you know that? Well, origin, insertion. Origin first, second, the insertion. There's another example, coracobrachialis. Coraco, there's a process on the scapula called the coracoid process. That's a mammal thing. I told you that in the skeleton, there's only 2 bones that form the pectoral girdle. And I said that's a mammalian thing. So non-mammals have at least 3. So what's the 3rd bone? Well, the 3rd bone is actually called the coracoid. That's what you'd have in a reptile shoulder girdle. Well, in mammals, the coracoid fuses with the scapula, and it's still there. It's just referred to as a process now. And the word coracoid just means crow-like, like a crow's beak or something. It's a little thing sticking on there, but it originally was a separate entity, a separate bone, but now it's just a process on the scapula. Anyway, coracobrachialis, so that's the coracoid process of the scapula, and of course the brachialis, that's upper arm, that's the humerus. So it's origin, insertion. Origin is the scapula, insertion is the humerus. See how that works? And then one more, look at this, sternocleidomastoid. This is like, so here you have 1, 2, 3 body regions. So sternum, cleido that's another word, another way of saying clavicle. Cleido, clavicle, I guess that's the Latin or whatever. But it means clavicle. And so, and then of course, mastoid, that's remember the mastoid process on your temporal bone, that knot behind your ear? So that's what that is. So you have 1, 2, 3 body regions. So if it's origin and insertion, the origin's written first, the insertion's written last. Where does the part in the middle go? Well, you got to kind of think about this one, because look, sternocleidomastoid. Where's mastoid process is on your head. Your cleido, or your sternum, that's your chest. And where's your clavicle? Well, it's also in your chest. So down here, so the clavicle and the sternum together make up the origin. So there's 2 origins, 1 insertion. That's that muscle that allows you to pull your head down into the side, your throat muscle right there, sternocleidomastoid, or sometimes sternocleidomastoideus. Your book probably just calls it the sternocleidomastoid. I can't remember. Anyway, all of these, there's only 3 examples. I guess you probably dig and you find some more, but these are, I don't know, 3 of my favorite, I guess, that I included, named according to their origin and insertion, okay? And then this one, number of origins, is, remember, some muscles can have more than one origin. Like you saw the sternocleidomastoid has more than one origin, but they name that one according to its origin and insertion. But sometimes you can name it after the number of heads. Remember, the number of heads and the origins is the same thing. And you can see the terms like bi and tri and quad means 2, 3, and 4. And sept means head. Biceps, triceps, quadriceps. Now, I just threw in quadriceps femoris, so I could just use the word quad just to have more than just 2 muscles. Humans don't have one of these. We do, but in humans, the quadriceps femoris is considered 4 different muscles. It's not like one 4-headed muscle. It's 4 separate muscles. These are your the anterior thigh muscles, the vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, erectus femoris, and the vastus intermedius. Those are your quadricep muscles. But like in a frog or something like that, they're considered the quadriceps femoris. Same thing. Anyway, biceps means 2-headed, femoris, 2-headed muscle in the femur. Triceps, brachii, brachia for upper arm, right? The 3-headed muscle associated with the humerus. See how that works? So named according to their number of heads and location, okay? And then this is our 7th criterion, our last one. These muscles are all named, at least in part, on how they function or their action, what they do when they contract. You see the words like abduct and adduct. When something is abducted with a B, opposed to adducted with a D, ABD, opposed to ADD. To abduct something, it's taken away, like a person has been abducted, they're taken away from their home. But if something is adducted, it means it's brought back. It's toward. So what are we abducting and adducting? Well, it's usually moving toward or away from the body's axis or the axis of the appendage. Like, for example, right here, the abductor pollicis longus. So there's three terms in there. The word abductor, that's an action for abduction. Pollicis is, remember, the thumb. And then longus, that's a shape because it's, you know, it's long, right? Or would long be a size? I think it'd be a size. You have long versus short. So this is a long thumb muscle that abducts the thumb. How do you do that? What is that? Watch. Here's my, can you see my hand? And to abduct means to like take it away. Remember I told you the axis of your body or the axis of your appendages runs through your third appendage, your middle finger. And so here's the midline of your appendage. And so if you're at the midline and you're moving away, that's pollicis abduction with a B, abduction. And so see what I'm doing? I don't know, can you all see that? I'm abducting my thumb. I'm moving my thumb away from the midline. That's the muscle that allows me to do that is my abductor pollicis longus. And I know what you're thinking. Well, how do you adduct your thumb? Well, it's a completely different muscle. Remember, these are antagonistic muscles. You have adductor and adductor muscles. So the adductor pollicis brings the thumb toward the midline like this. So these two muscles are antagonistic. Okay, you see that? So this is pollicis adduction and then abduction. So I'm moving my thumb. Y'all see that? My big crowd out there. Okay. Same sort of thing. So those are actions. Okay. Action, location, and size. Okay. Then flex and extend. And I put in parentheses less than angle, greater than angle, to define what flex and extend really mean. Remember in math class, I guess it's geometry, right? When you calculate angles, is that what you do? And remember 90 degrees and 45 degrees and then 0, you know, like that. And so going from 0 to 45 to 90, you're making the angle bigger, okay? And so between two lines, you see how I'm doing that? Well, if you're increasing the angle, all right, making the angle bigger, you're extending the joint is extending. But if you're decreasing the angle, making it smaller, like going from 90 to 45 to 0, you're flexing. So extension and flexion, okay? So my examples here, and there's all kinds of flexor and extender muscles, but I'm stuck in the thumb world here for right now. The flexor pollicis longus. Flexor, that's an action. Pollicis is a location, and longus, that's a size, right? So we're flexing our thumbs. How do you flex your thumb? Well, here's my thumb, and I'm gonna flex it. Here's the angle. There's the bone, here's the bone, here's the joint in the middle. Flex, going from 0 to 90, I guess, like that, making it small, or 180 to 90, or however, like that, flexion, extension. Extension going from 90 to 0, right? Making it smaller. Flex, extend, flex and extend. Or everybody thinks flex, you're doing like this. You know, I'm flexing. You think you can get the same result by going to the beach and doing this? Is that sexy? Hey, baby, look at that. Flexion, extension. Anyway, the muscles that allow you to flex your thumbs, here they are. The flexor pollicis longus and the extensor pollicis longus. Flexing and extending your thumb. And then, like I said, there's other flexor muscles and extender muscles and so forth. Okay, next is sphinct. The word sphinct literally means to squeeze. And you've heard of sphincter muscles, a sphincter. It used to be like a playground derogatory term on the playground. If you want to like insult a classmate, you point your finger and call them a sphincter. Oh, you sphincter. What are you thinking about? You think, well, you're thinking like an anal sphincter, right? Or some kind of sphincter. What really is a sphincter? A sphincter is a muscle that's its origin and insertion is on itself. And when it contracts, it squeezes, it kind of like just pinches something closed. And usually you have sphincter muscles around some kind of tubular structure or canal or whatever. For my example here, the sphincter urethrae externus, or the English equivalent to that would be the external urethral sphincter. And so external urethral sphincter, that's what we're squeezing. We're squeezing the urethra. The urethra is the tube that drains your bladder, right? And of course, you want to squeeze it closed to keep it from draining. You have two sphincter urethrae muscles. You have an internal urethral sphincter and external urethral sphincter. And usually when you have sphincters arranged like that, the deeper of the two is going to be smooth muscle, which is governed by the autonomic nervous system that you don't have conscious control over. And the more superficial one is going to be skeletal muscle, like this example. These are skeletal muscles. The sphincter urethrae externus, or the external urethral sphincter, the skeletal muscle that you consciously control, like when you hold your pee. I gotta pee, hold it. How do you hold it? Well, with this muscle. And you're stimulated to hold this when your internal urethral sphincter relaxes. It just relaxes on its own. When does it relax? Well, it relaxes when the bladder gets full. When the bladder gets full, there's pressure receptors that detect that, sends information to the spinal cord and says, hey, bladder's full. It reciprocates with inhibitory responses to the smooth muscle. The smooth muscle is always, always, always contracted until it receives an inhibitory reflex, and it causes it to relax. And if it's going to relax, gravity's going to take over and you're going to start peeing. But if it's not a good time to pee, like you're in class or standing in line at the bank or whatever, well, you can override that, right? Well, thank goodness you got this external one. Your anal sphincter is the exact same way. You have an internal anal sphincter, the smooth muscle, and it's always contracted until the rectum is full with fecal matter. And when it gets full, it relaxes. And then rather than you just sitting there dropping a stool like a cow out in the field, just wherever willy-nilly just dropping poop, you can override that, thank goodness, with a more superficial external anal sphincter that closes it. I mean, you can hold it, you can hold it for so long, right? But sometimes, hey, anyway, we're not going to go there. But that's how they work, and that's what they are. Again, the superficial ones are skeletal muscle, which is part of the skeletal system. The deep ones are smooth. So anyway, but sphincter means to squeeze, and that's what we're squeezing. Okay. Levator. Look at this word, levator. Put an E right there in the front. What do you spell? Elevator. An elevator. What do you call an elevator in England? Do you know? Or in Europe? They don't call them elevators in Europe. What do they call them? They call them lifts. Take the lift. The lift is an elevator. The word levator or elevator means lifter, to lift something. And so you look at my example, levator scapulae. What are we lifting? You're lifting your shoulder blades, your scapula. That's when I'm shrugging my shoulders, I'm contracting my levator scapulae. There's also a levator ani. I'm not going to show you that. It's in the what they call the urogenital diaphragm. Basically, your crotch muscles around your anus that contract your anus, and the pelvic, the urogenital diaphragm. So anyway, lifter, lifts, elevates. That's an action, right? So levator, scapulae, location, action. All right. Now look at this, risor. There's a muscle called the risorius. Risor means laughter. So the laughter muscle. On the corners of your mouth, there's just one little skinny little muscle that inserts on the corners of your mouth and it anchors up here on the xiphoid process. And when it contracts, it draws up the corners of your mouth. It makes you smile, your smiling muscle, your laughter muscle. This is another mammalian thing. Only mammals have musculature for facial expression. Think about this. You've ever seen a fish smile? No. Frogs don't smile. A snake? No. But you can change the shape of your face if you're a mammal, like a dog or a cat or a crazy professor. Yeah, only mammals can do that, and so that's the function of these muscles. They serve no other function other than like change the shape of your face for one reason or another. Why would you change the shape of your face or the whatever? That's all a part of communication, So mammals communicate with one another with like visual cues. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later when we talk. Or did we talk about that? Oh, when we talk about the eyes, I think that's when I talk about facial expressions and so forth. Anyway, risorius, the laughter muscle. Of course, that laughter is a function, right? So risorius. Masseter. Masseter means chewer, and there's actually a muscle called the masseter. Or to chew is to masticate. And so when you're masticating, you're chewing. And so there's a muscle called the chewer muscle. That's, in your cheeks. Inserts on your jaw, and it elevates your jaw. That's another, mastication is another mammalian thing. Only mammals masticate. Now look at these these not last two, but these next two terms, supinate and pronate. This is referring to your forearm. Remember I said in the anatomical position, the radius and ulna are parallel to one another. And, but you can cross, if you do that, you can cross the radius over the ulna. And that motion or action or function is called pronation, to put it back to where it's supposed to be in the anatomical position where the radius is parallel with the ulna. It's supinated, okay? So to supinate means to like lay back. So to kick back like this, I guess. Or to pronate means to bow. If you're bowing, you're pronating. So thank you very much. Your hand is bowing, I guess. Pronate, supinate, pronate, supinate. And of course, the muscles allow you to do that, or the pronator muscles and the supinator muscles. There's just one muscle in your forearm called the supinator that supinates your, uncrosses the radius from the ulna. And the pronator teres allows your radius to cross over. So those are actions, right? And then finally, the last one I have listed, the cremaster muscle. Remember, I always mention things that are unique to humans, unique to mammals, et cetera, and unique to vertebrates. This one is unique to one of our genders, the cremaster muscle. We're hanging and suspending something. Guess what we're hanging and suspending? And it's gender specific. Take a guess which gender is hanging something and suspending something. Both? She says, the balls. I love her accent, the balls. Yes, the testes. That's how we say it in anatomy class. That's kind of funny because it reminds me of a story one time when in a lab exam, you can't call them balls in anatomy, and because I can't give you credit for that. And there's in an anatomy practical one year, I asked name this organ, and I had a pin stuck in the testis of a fetal pig. And it was, in those days, it was just fill in the blank. And the correct answer was testis or testicle. And the student in question wrote the word nut, N-U-T. Name this organ, and he put nut. And I marked it wrong. And boy, he had a fit. You know, why'd you mark it wrong? That was his nuts. I said, no, you don't call them nuts in biology class. You call them testicles. So I wouldn't give him credit for it. But anyway, that's what we're hanging, suspending here. There's, when we study the development of the external genitalia in both sexes, but in the male, his nuts or his balls or his testes, his jewels, they're in early in development, the gonads, how about that? The gonads are in the same position in the pelvic cavity basically as the female's gonads. But of course, he's destined to become a male, right? And so his gonads leave the pelvic body cavity and they descend and are suspended to the exterior of the pelvic body cavity, held outside in a scrotum, which is a integumentary structure, formed from your skin. And so, and all mammals do this, and it's only mammals do this, where the males keep their testicles on the outside of the body. So why do you do that? Well, to keep them cooler. The interpelvic temperature. Remember, mammals are warm-blooded. Well, that warmness we benefit from for having a optimal physiology and optimal skeletal muscle performance, et cetera, all these great things that have to do with being warm-blooded. There's a downside to it. It's too warm for normal spermatogenesis. And so to compensate for that, the testes are held outside of the body and kept about 3 degrees cooler than the interpelvic temperature. And so they're kept nice and cool. Well, anyway, as the testes are descending by a ligament that's pulling them to the outside, strips of the internal abdominal oblique musculature, remember that abdominal musculature I was telling you about? It kind of comes with it. And so these little strips of this abdominal oblique that follow it down into the scrotum. And it's still there. It's just skeletal muscle attached to the testes. And when they function, they elevate the testes. And so we identify these muscles that elevate the testes as the cremaster muscles. They hang, but then they contract. Now, we say skeletal muscles are voluntary. You have voluntary control over them, that you can consciously contract them. I don't know anybody that can consciously contract their cremaster muscles and elevate their testes on command. I might like to see that, but I don't know. I don't know if that's possible. Not all your skeletal muscles, you're supposed to have voluntary control over them, but that's not 100% true, because these particular ones, I don't think you do. And there's others that you don't, or you lost the ability to contract them. For example, you have auricular muscles. You have the muscles that attach to your ears, your auricularis muscles. You have the same external ear muscles that like a dog or a cat or a deer has, You ever seen the dog move their ears? Hey, Rover, the ears come up, or they turn like this. What's going on? You can't do that with your ears. Change the direction of your ears so you can hear stuff. The muscles are there, but most people can't move their ears. Okay, there's probably some kind of weird exception is somebody, I can move my ears, but most people can't. And most people can't elevate their testicles on command. So, and go figure. Anyway, the end. So, hey, look, that took not long, about 30. We started kind of late, so maybe 35 minutes or so. But we are finished. And that's, what's today, Tuesday. So your test is Thursday of this week. And, you know, it's over those 3 PowerPoints: muscles, the skeletal system, and then, bones, muscles, bones, the skeleton, and the muscles. That's the order they went to in. And that's it. So anyway, with the time remaining, I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you guys may have. You guys have any questions, all 30 of you, which is about half the, no, it's less than half the class. So anyway, where I lost you guys. I don't see my thing. I don't know what happened to my, I tucked it away somewhere. I can't find it anymore. But any Zoom people out there?
I have a question about the muscles.
Okay, good. Ask me.
Okay, so I don't know if you can answer it really, but how, like, are we gonna like you gonna show us a picture and we have to tell you?
No. You're never gonna have pictures in lecture.
Okay.
It's all no, that's all lab kind of stuff.
Okay.
And no, it's, you know, I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm trying to find. Let's see.
Thank you.
I don't know where you guys. Let me try to find. I'm trying to find my audience. I don't know where you guys are. Anyway.
I have a question too
But
about.
Hang on. But about the muscle. Every semester I get this. How are you going to ask those muscle questions? I'm going to show you how I'm going to ask those muscle questions. Let me get back here. And am I still sharing? Yeah, I'm still sharing the screen. Remember, there's 7 criteria that are used. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. In naming muscles, right? And then these tables that I've been going over are basically profiling each of the criteria, right? And so I'll give you examples. You see all these muscles right here? All these muscles that I've listed right here have been named, at least in part, on where they're found in the body, because I recognize these terms: pector, gluteus, brachii, pollicis, etc. Okay, you get that? And so a test question could very well be like it give you a list of muscles, like the buccinator, the subscapularis, the brachialis, and the pectoralis major were all named according to their what? So location, fascicular orientation, size, whatever. That's how I'm going to ask questions. Or, you know, you look at it, you can make up test questions any old way you want. Like, say, the vastus lateralis was named according to its location and what? Because vastus lateralis is a location, right? What's vastus have to do with? Vastus. I'll give you a hint. It's right here. Size. So that's how I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do that. Your 50-question multiple choice test, 1/3 of your test is going to come from questions like this. So yeah. So it's a significant portion of your exam. So in order to pass your second exam, you have to know your muscle nomenclature. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's a question I get every semester. And I'm glad you asked it, because there's always a handful of students that screw that up on the second exam. I didn't know you were going to ask all those muscle questions. Why wouldn't I? You know, I spent time on it, and it's you know, I built these tables. If I go through the trouble of building these tables and going over them, you know, they're probably pretty important, and I'm going to use them. So, any other questions? I mean, muscle, bone, skeleton.
My question is about I think it's the hip bone, you know, okay, so on
Yeah.
the slide with the hip bone, it has
Mhm.
all the little different things, but it's not tight. So do we have to learn like the whole picture of the
I'm
hip
glad you
bone?
asked me that too, because I told you y'all this. As I'm going through, as I went through the skeleton, this is all axial stuff. Remember, and I said this more than once, you know, I'm using these pictures to, you know, get across my point where I'm talking about. And there's all kinds of stuff that's labeled on every picture, you know. But the only items that you need to worry about are the ones I talk about. And I think I said that like a good example, like right here. I said the brachium, the upper arm, the humerus. That was basically it. But look at all this stuff. Here's the humerus. It labels all kinds of material. I said, don't worry about all that. So that kind of stuff is lab, and you'll learn all that extra detail of each of the bone in lab, unless I mention it in lecture. And some things I did mention in lecture, like right here, like the acetabulum. Remember, that's the hip socket. The ischial tuberosity, you know, that's a prominent structure on your butt. That's your butt, some of your butt muscles attached there. Actually, some of your hamstring muscles attached there. But anyway, that's, you know, a unique feature. I didn't tell you about this, but I feel like I almost should. But I'm not going to ask you on the test because I didn't tell y'all. But remember, I told you about the foramen magnum. So the largest foramen in the skull, but it's not the largest in the body. And I'm surprised nobody asked me, well, what is the largest one in the body? Well, here it is right here, the obturator foramen. The obturator foramen is formed, you know, in the coxal bone between the pubis and the ischium. So there it is. It's actually named after a nerve, the obturator nerve. But the obturator nerve obviously isn't that big. It's actually very small in other non-mammalian vertebrates. But as you get to the mammalian pelvic girdle, it gets huge, right? It gets bigger and heavier duty things are fusing together. And so this is just kind of named after, there was a small opening and it got bigger in mammals, just kind of to save some space and weight there. But anyway, so to answer your question, you only need to know what I talk about or what I listed on the slides, okay?
Okay, thank you. I just want to double check.
Good, all right. Anything else? What about you guys? We got a big crowd in here today, you should see.
I have a question.
Okay, there's somebody else has a question.
So bones are classified by their shape and by axial or appendicular, and that's the only way they're classified.
Those are two ways you can classify bones. Yeah, yeah. You can classify them by shape. You know, because remember, there's 4 basic shapes all bones have, and all the bones in your body will be either axial or appendicular. And you should know this, and that's another thing. You know, how are you going to ask these bone questions? Well, I will, you know, ask like, which of the following bones are of the axial skeleton, or which of the following is appendicular? You know, you give you a list of bones, and you should know all bones of the body, what if they are axial or appendicular. Okay, know the difference between the axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. And then the shapes of them, you know, you should know that too. You know, which of the following is a flat bone, which of the following is an irregular bone, which of the following is a long bone, which of the following is a short bone, you know, something like that. Or which of the following is a long bone, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And what did you say your little like jingle thing was for the for the wrist bones?
Henry caught 10 turtles plus 3 little snakes. Isn't that cute?
That is cute.
Henry caught 10 turtles plus 3 little snakes. But you know, there's others if you want me to share any of the others with you. But that's my favorite one because of course I made it.
That's the one I was talking about.
Good. Because yeah, Henry, or since we're from where I'm teaching in Acadiana, I guess this is considered Acadiana, French part of the state. You can call it not Henry, but Henri. Henri caught 10 turtles plus Traron. Is that I say turtle, Traron? That's a big snapping turtle, right? How do you say frog? No, not frog, snakes. I don't know, snakes. Is there a Cajun word for snakes? I'm sure. Serpentine, serpent, whatever. Anyway, any other questions? You guys don't have any questions? Just make up something. We got all kinds of time to kill. We got like 30 minutes. So.
Serpent is the French word.
Okay, hang on. What'd you say? What's the French word?
Serpent is serpent.
Serpent?
Serpent. Serpent. It's serpent, but
Oh,
it's
serpent, like serpent.
right.
Serpent. That's a snake?
Correct.
Sweet. I'm gonna have to change it. Henri caught 10 Trérons plus 3 Titans serpents. Oh, okay. Okay, what's your question? Uh-huh. She's asking about the vertebrae, and you want to know how you tell the difference between all the 3. Okay, that's a good question because it's real easy to do, and I tell like my lab students, and you know, you can think about this in lecture 2 if I ask you. But I think it's most helpful in lab. Like if you have a disarticulated vertebra like this one right here, and you're trying to figure out what it is. Remember that there's only 3 types of vertebrae that articulate. There's cervical, the ones in the neck, and then there's 12 thoracic, the ones that have ribs attached to them, and then below that there's 5 lower lumbar vertebrae. And so you look for key characteristics on those vertebrae. They kind of like scream out, hey, I belong to this group or that group. Like, for example, I always say, ask yourself 2 questions when you're trying to figure out a vertebra. Like, for example, if you got one, let's see, like right here, the first question you ask is, do you see transverse foramen? These are the holes right here. Only cervical vertebrae have transverse foramen. So if you see transverse foramen, you know it's cervical. The second question you may ask is, do you see rib facets? Rib facets are where the ribs attach. Right here is for the head of the rib, and right here is for the tubercle of the rib. See those little marks? Only thoracic vertebrae are going to have those. And then the third type of vertebra right here, or right here. These are lumbar. If you don't see transverse foramen or you don't see rib facets, it has to be lumbar. Because I always say you figure out lumbar vertebrae by the process of elimination. No transverse foramen, no rib facets. It's got to be lumbar because they really don't have anything super special. Does that make sense? Okay, she's got it. You guys got it? And then these, remember the last 2 types of vertebrae, we have 5. Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and caudal. But those last
I have
2,
another question.
sacral and caudal, they're fused. And they're only, of the 206 bones, they're only considered as 1 bone each. So the sacral vertebrae fuse to form the sacrum. The caudal vertebrae fuse to form The coccyx, your tailbone. Okay, what's your question?
I think you just answered it. So the sacral vertebrae and the coccyx, they're just considered one each. Like
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're considered one each. Most of the time, you have 5 sacral vertebrae. See, I got S1 through S5. And I say most of the time you have 5 caudal vertebrae, but there's a lot of variation in the caudal vertebrae. Less so in the sacrum than there are with the coccyx. The coccyx is a lot more variable. I mean, you could have 3, 4, or 5. There's rarely more than 5. So I think like on average is about 5, something like that. But you can have more. I told you stories about my dad delivering babies with tails, and because he had supernumerary caudal vertebrae. I know that's one way to say it, supernumerary caudal vertebrae. They might have another obstetric kind of term for it. I don't know what, but that's what as an anatomist, I've always called it supernumerary caudal vertebrae, resulting in the presence of a tail. It's usually not functional though. Just kind of like little things sticking out. You can Google pictures of babies with tails. Now, be careful. Anytime you Google anything that has to do with anatomy, you're going to probably find something either distasteful or fake or both. But yeah, that's just, the internet. You're always taking a risk Googling images of anything, because you're always going to find, what you're, most of the time you'll find what you're looking for, then just garbage, anyway. So, any other questions? Anybody?
I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you just explain the abductor pollex and the adductor one, the difference between them again?
The abductor and adductor pollicis.
Yes, that.
Well, when I was talking about those, I was just talking about how they were named, and remember the 7 criteria that are used, and those 2 muscles in question were named at least in part on their action or their function. Okay, and when you abduct something, it's moved away. It moved away from the axis. If you're going to adduct it, ADD, you're going to move it toward the axis. Okay, and so if you look at my hand, or you look at your hand, the axis of your hand runs right through the middle of your 3rd digit right here. Okay, and so if I'm going to move my hand toward, or if I'm going to move my thumb toward the axis, like this direction, that's called adduction, ADD, to adduct the thumb. But to abduct it means to take it away or move it away from the axis. Pull it away. So adduction and abduction. Abductor, adductor, abductor. Get it?
Thank you.
So that's all it is. And there's, that's why they name that muscle, because of what it does. And then if you look in your body, there's 656 muscles, and they're all named based on those criteria, combinations of those criteria. But I haven't counted up how many muscles I used in your PowerPoint, like on the tables that I made. I've actually repeated some of them, uses the same muscle more than once, but it's certainly just a few muscles. But you certainly can find other adductor and adductor muscles in the body. And I think I actually talked about remember the adductor longus muscles? I think I talked about when I talked about shape or size or something, where it's to adduct the thighs, right? But for y'all's test, I'll only use the muscles from the table. So I'm not going to present you with the muscles you never read about. Although I could, and then that, to me, in my mind, that would be fair. You know, you should be able to figure out any of them, but just, I don't know. I'm just going to use those. I guess I'm getting soft in my old age. So, but there's not going to be anything. So it's going to be something you have seen before. Okay. But there, you know, there's a lot of muscles out there. And like I said, you know, just look at it. There's a table in your book that lists, I think, probably most of them. And it shows you a picture of them. Is its function, its origin, its insertion, and of course its action, what it does when it contracts, and usually its innervation, you know, what nerve innervates it and so forth. There's all kinds of stuff you can learn about the muscles. I'm just kind of holding it to muscle nomenclature for this class. So, anybody else? I would love to have a question. Or are y'all looking?
I'll ask a random question.
Okay, asking a random question. That's fine.
Whenever you were a student learning things like this, what were like your study tactics of helping?
What did I do?
Yeah.
Now, what I did is just what I did. And I'm not saying it's the thing to do or the right thing to do, and it might not be for everybody, but it worked for me, okay? I attended every class. I sat on the first row and I rewrote my notes. It's work. Some people don't have to work as hard for their grades. I had to work for my grades, and it wasn't easy, you know, but I did good. Look, I teach the damn class now. But no, the key thing for me is I rewrote my notes, and rewriting them, I put them in a format where I could quiz myself. You know, some people make flashcards. I kind of did a flashcard kind of thing, is I would write material on one side of a piece of paper, and then I flip it over and put like the answers on the backside. So it's basically like a flashcard. And I would do that for every class meeting, all right? And I would learn it, you know, before the next class meeting. And then when I went to the next class meeting, I would repeat it. I would rewrite my notes again. But when I would review it, I would start with the first page. And so the first page was the review. And I would do that for every day. And so by the time it was coming test time, I was fully reviewing the material from the day one. So I was, you know, rewriting my notes, testing myself. And of course, it got to the point where I was like, man, I know this. And that's how you should be. That's how all of you should be on the day of a test. If you're shaking in your boots and you're nervous, you're useless. You need to get to the point where you're confident on the day of a test, not scared. You have to be able to come to class and be confident. I know this stuff. I studied. There's nothing that he can throw at me that I don't know because I've studied. Cramming for the exam, you're crazy. You can't do that. This is too much material. There's no way. Some students say, I studied a week in advance. Well, that's not, you're cramming, in my opinion. You know, that's not enough time, you know. So take more time, do what it takes. You know, I studied every night, you know, and rewrote my notes every night. That's what I had to do. There's no way. Now, there are some people look at it one time and they got it. I had a fraternity brother, like I guess he had a photographic memory. He just sat through it one time. At halftime, he'd just sleep in his calculus class, and he was, you know, usually nursing a hangover. But oh no, I got it. And some people are like, I couldn't do that. I could not do that. I had to work for my grades, and you know, but that's what I did. You know, there is a positive correlation in attendance and success in the classroom. And so I did not miss a single day of class. Every class, and like I said, I always sat on the front row, paid attention, took good notes. Back in that day, we didn't have PowerPoints and overheads and stuff. We just had some old guy up there talking, and you had to write down. And if your notes suck and you don't understand, you hope that you have a good textbook, and so you make your own notes, and you look at extra material. And so that's a thing too. But sitting on the first row was a challenge for me in many classes, particularly when I had a really boring professor. You're gonna have a whole host of professors in your career. Some of them you're gonna like, some of them you're gonna dislike, some of them you're really gonna hate. But I remember I took an economics class, and oh my God, I struggled every day to stay awake in that damn class. And the girl behind me would constantly poke me in the ribs with her pencil. Wake up, you're snoring. So, hey, that's life, But anyway, it's, you just do what you got to do, That's what I did. And then, I've seen students with big old stacks of cards, index cards, they're making these like flash cards or whatever. And they go, look at all this and look how much I studied. You put in a lot of effort, you did a lot of like whatever, but did you learn all that?
Yeah, it never works.
Yeah, no, if you're just spinning your wheels, doing something, you're busy doing busy work, like making out flashcards, making things pretty. But are you learning it? No, don't do all that crap if you're not learning it. There's no secrets, no shortcuts, no nothing. You just gotta go over it. Now, my class is mostly, if it's not 100%, it's damn near it, just memorization. A lot of memorization, and to memorize things, it's repetition. You got to go over and over and over till it's etched in your brain. So I know that, I remember that. There is some critical thinking involved, because I do, give you those questions you got to kind of have to think about. If this is like this, then why is this like that, or whatever kind of deal. So you have to understand the material somewhat, but there's a lot of memorization, But I don't really do that. Just ask you to just regurgitate your notes, just memorize stuff and just spit it back out, But you have to memorize a lot of stuff. This is like anatomy, It's just all very, very, very term-laden course. A lot of terms you just gotta memorize, and that would be good for, like I say, in rewrite. You put like the names of the whatever on one side, and you flip it over. Oh yeah, I know what that is. Anyway, that's kind of a long answer to a short question, or something like that. So, you guys, anybody else have any questions? I'll try to answer it short, which is not easy for me to do. Y'all good? No other questions. There's 23 of y'all out there still. Well, if you have questions between now and Thursday, you get in touch with me, just email me or whatever. But remember, listen to me. You guys, make sure you have reliable access to the internet and you can Zoom, right? And you only have to have one camera on you. She was so paranoid, she had two cameras on. That's a look at she's on here twice. What's going on? Oh, that's another thing too. Oh my gosh, should have said this at the beginning of the class. You guys, when you sent a link to register or you're sent an invitation, is that how it is? On my courses, there's a copy of what's been emailed to you, and it's an invitation for you to register for the course. Okay, and then you are sent a link. That link is for you, okay? You do not share your links with other students. You hear me? Don't do that. You cannot use somebody else's link, because when you use somebody else's link, it identifies you as them. So
Yeah, someone used
Don't-
my link. So if you're out there, don't use my link.
do not use other students' links, because if you're using somebody else's link, you are not present for the exam. And so I don't have record of you, the exam. You didn't take the exam. You weren't proctored, so I can't give you credit for the exam. You see what's happening? That's how I proctor the course, and I see y'all's faces and names. But if I got two Jane Does, only one of them is really the Jane Doe, the other's some dude. That's not Jane Doe, that's some guy. And that's happened in more than once. And so I know who you are, but I don't know who this person is. Whoever this person is, they're not getting credit for the test. So think about that. Only use your link. Don't share your links with anybody. And if you did, tell them to fix that and get their own link. I mean, it's really easy to do. You just go to my courses and you'll see where I sent out the link, the invitation or whatever, and just copy that, and you'll be sent a link. And it'll be based on your email address, and you should use your school email address. That's the easiest thing to do. Okay, it identifies you and so forth. Okay. Any other questions? The link for for the whole semester. Yeah, it's this. Yeah, it's the same one. The whatever link you're using to Zoom now, it's going to work Thursday. Yeah, it's the same one. Yeah, but make sure you had two. I don't know how you did that. You had like two phones. Yeah. I said, look, she's on there 2 times. That's okay. I'd rather you be on there 2 times than not, or be identified as somebody else, you know. Yeah. I guess. Well, did you do that for the last test? The first test? You did that for the first test. And there was no problem. I didn't send you a nasty gram and yell at you for something. So if it worked for you the first time, then that should work. She's asking about typing in her username and password on her.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, so somebody else says that works. Yeah, that's fine, I guess. You know,
Everyone has the same username and password, but everyone has specific links.
Okay. She says everybody has the same username and password, but everybody has specific links.
Yes.
Okay. So, however, I don't care how you guys get on or how you Zoom, just as long as you Zoom and you know, take your test on my courses at the correct time. Make sure you do it at 11 o'clock? Is that what time we start? It's 11 to 11:50. It's not a 2-hour exam. It's 11 to 11:50 Thursday. Okay. And then come early, you know, make sure you get all your ducks in a row before 11 o'clock. You know, don't be scrambling, you know, get connection issues or whatever. So make sure you get everything ready, you know, because I have students scrambling, you know, I can't get in or whatever or something. I can't help you like the day of the exam, like 2 minutes before it starts or 5 minutes afterwards, you know, because half the time I'm, you know, I'm looking at students take their test and I don't have time to answer emails and stuff. And that's another thing too. Mute your mics. Don't ask me questions like that. Send me a chat on the Zoom if you have a question. You know, but that's it. So y'all good? We're good. Thank you. She says. So that means she's dismissing the class. So okay, you guys are good. I'm gonna cut you loose, and I will see you guys Thursday. And best of luck to y'all. I know you're gonna do just fine. All right. Bye bye.